Good morning. Can you guys hear me? All right, happy Wednesday. Thanks so much for joining us today as we address dealers, data-driven insights, and black swans. I'm Rebecca Kritzman. I have the privilege of being a part of the auto marketing team at Equifax. And I just want to do a quick intro to our esteemed panel members today here from Equifax. So first, we have Scott McMahon. He is our CMO of the auto vertical, and he is responsible for driving the overall strategy for the auto vertical from a marketing perspective. He actually has deep roots in auto. He started the auto vertical at Equifax about 5 years ago, and then came from Cox and spent about 8 years there at Cox Automotive. So welcome to Scott. Next, we have Larry Pappalardo. Larry is everything dealers. He is our main dealer guy. So if you have any issues or solutions that you need, Larry's our guy. He has a very interesting background. He actually spent over 20 years on the auto lending side at Wells Fargo. So working with dealers every day. So he brings a completely different insight and expertise to the team, and we appreciate it. Thanks, Larry. Finally, not last but not least, right, Todd? We have Todd Ague. He leads our product development for all things auto from a lender and dealer perspective. Todd has deep experience in product management and bringing innovation into the marketplace. Last, he was at Verizon, where he helped develop and launch Hum, which I'm sure y'all are aware of. Hum, a big telematics product for Verizon. So Todd, thanks for being here. So I just want to start with addressing the elephant in the room. So I don't know if you noticed that Equifax has been in the headlines a lot lately. We're kind of hard to miss out there, okay? And this is what we're calling our Black Swan event. It's something that happened and automatically changed everything for us. And so I want to start the discussion today, and no pressure on Scott, but Scott, can you go ahead and address the cybersecurity incident that we've had and what Equifax is doing to really help address this with consumers, with dealers, with auto lenders, and with our partners out in the marketplace?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. And first, thanks, Rebecca. And thank you for Used Car Week for the opportunity to go ahead and address the audience here. Definitely a great opportunity for us. We're very honored to speak here. I'm really, actually, quite honestly, happy to share some more details about some of the questions you may be having in your mind and be available for other questions later on today. And thanks to Cherokee Publishing for doing a great job putting on this event. So as Rebecca mentioned, our elephant in the room is a black swan. So Equifax has certainly experienced its black swan now. Again, that unexpected event that when it happens, it changes everything. And so we are dramatically different. So I don't know how close you are to what has happened at Equifax with the breach, with the news. There's certainly a lot of information out in the media today that you can read and review. They'll give you all the gory details of when, what, and how it all happened. But I'll give you a quick little overview right now at the 30,000-foot level. So the first thing is what was breached, right? So it was our consumer dispute portal that was breached back earlier this year, and it was announced in September that it happened. And so what had happened with the dispute portal is it's a website basically for consumers to log in and dispute something they're seeing on their credit file. So a missing trade line or a wrongly reported piece of data. So it's that portal that was hacked into. So basically 145 million records were exposed to hackers, as our CEO says, stolen information from us, and at that point, what was stolen? So we have consumer name, address, their date of birth, and their social security number. In some rare cases, much smaller numbers, we have driver's license information and driver's license number specifically, and credit card number. But that's in small numbers. And then also, it's mostly isolated to the U.S. There is a little bit of impact to Europe as well as Canada. But again, the lion's share is, unfortunately, for people in this room, within the U.S. mostly. So I'd like to take this moment to go ahead and apologize for the organization for allowing this to happen. Certainly, you'll see our new CEO and past CEO talking about this in a very apologetic way. It's not anything that we're proud of by any means, but we are certainly committed to solving the problems that have been created in the past by this breach. So anything that's affected your organization, that impacts to your operations, questions you've had to field on behalf of the breach that happened, as well as any impacts it may have had to you personally. We're all consumers in this room, so there's a likelihood that some of you, many of you, have been impacted by this. So my apologies for that. So. With that said, so what are we doing about this, right? So there's two areas that we're really focused in on. It's security, making sure that everything that we do has security at the end of the sentence, right? So it is in every conversation today. It's not like this is new to us. We've always been really vigilant on security. Hackers they stay up late at night, think about it, and they have organizations, if you will. They're very structured in how they breach in. So we're in this situation now where we're now every day, every moment, every conversation, we're talking about security. So it is not only our top priority, it's something that we live and breathe. And we're going through employee training, employee awareness, and making sure the organization at large has this, not just the auto team, but the entire organization of Equifax. So the good news is that with the security breach that has happened, we don't have any data integrity issues. So in other words, the data was viewed, but it wasn't manipulated in any way. So you should have confidence for those of you who are using Equifax data that the information you're using is still as reliable as it always has been. There's no changing of credit scores or credit information. And that goes beyond even just the credit data that we have. So our employment data that we have is completely fine, as well as our marketing data, our consumer marketing information that we have, as well as our telco and utility data. So everything's fine as far as the environment is concerned. But now, at this point, we've already patched what has been gapped, and we're moving forward. So specifically, what have we done at the organization to go ahead and help with this? So we brought on third-party consulting firms to go ahead and help us understand, do a post-mortem of what had happened, and kind of look ahead of what needs to happen. I can guarantee you this, that we are a different organization, and we are looking at the way in which we can help improve security, cybersecurity, even just beyond the walls of Equifax. So we are, again, committed to this, making this change, and these third parties are helping us figure out that path ahead to be best of breed in the cybersecurity marketplace. The second area that we're really interested in solving is this exposed more challenges than we were aware of as far as consumers, specifically in the communication and awareness and access reach to us. We're going internally talking about how we should be looking at consumers not as data, but as consumers as humans, right? And so trying to explain very complicated credit algorithms and data points and why do we have this data, they never shared it with us, all these things are very confusing and complicated to consumers. So we're trying to get to real common language and not talk in code and data analyst speak anymore. So, and then getting consumers access to us through the web portals, through the call centers, making sure that they have every opportunity to go ahead and reach us when they need us, and getting more control, more awareness of their future with credit data handling. And so with that said, communication is key to us, both with our customers, our top customers, and consumers. We're going through a process right now of having our largest customers in more intimate groups and then moving that conversation out into larger forms. So you'll see more and more as the weeks go on with our communication. And then lastly, we're working with the entire industry, right? This is not just an Equifax problem any longer. It's an industry problem, and that's even beyond the auto industry. So a lot of the people that we're working with are partners in the space, with our fellow credit bureaus in the space, as well as at the end of the day, working with government and regulatory bodies to make sure that we have all the tools necessary to take this situation and really firm up the path ahead. So we're really excited, and again, thank you for this opportunity to speak to you guys today. We have more information certainly that we can share, but we're kind of bound by time here, but happy to answer questions after the session if you'd like, but we'll have some information as far as who to contact back at the shop later on.
Yep, absolutely. And can you address, Scott, This is obviously, to your point, going to help change the industry, the credit industry, period, and what that means, to dealers and to auto lenders out in the industry specifically as we move forward and look ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, this is, as mentioned, it's a breach that's happened. We can't go back into history and change how things happen, but we certainly can take good positive steps moving forward. So one of the things that we recently released is a impacted consumer flag. So it's basically a yes/no data indicator that can be reached by platforms and service providers and exposed to dealers as necessary and lenders that will go ahead and say that a consumer record that you're engaged with has a potential or has been likely breached in this 145 million records. So that flag is out there to help all of you get a better understanding of how much diligence should you be putting into reviewing this customer with fraud and identity checks. The second thing is, and you probably have already seen this, but the consumer lock on your credit file. It's a tool that can be leveraged by consumers to go ahead and kind of lock down their credit file so they're not being used for credit decisioning purposes and no trade lines or loans being opened up on that individual. So then we also offered a 12-month monitoring service to consumers to allow consumers to have the opportunity to see on a day-to-day basis what's happening with their credit profile. But what's probably more exciting, and I think this is catalyst for change moment, that we're really excited about an app that we're releasing at the end of January, which is it simplifies the locking process, right? So right now, I will admit it's complicated to go ahead and lock and unlock a credit file as a consumer is concerned. But moving forward with our Lock for Life, which is a free product that we're offering to consumers, they'll have the ability to go ahead and virtually just with a swipe of a finger, and it's going to be safe and secure and making sure that all the proper protocols are put in place, but it'll be simplified into locking and unlocking, so you as dealers and platforms won't be burdened with this, having to help the customer through a complicated process. And then lastly, we're just working on as I mentioned, with the industry players, with government and credit bureaus, our fellow credit bureaus as well, just to make sure that we're doing everything possible to make the effective change. But and we're very open to hearing a lot of the feedback from all of you. We are eager to hear what's working and not working because we're committed to solving those problems, and very open to those points of contact.
Okay, thanks, Scott. And again, Scott mentioned this. If you guys have any questions about the cybersecurity incident, Wyatt Jeffries is our automotive spokesperson. We're going to flip up his contact information at the end of the panel discussion that you can contact him for any of those type of questions. So again, at the end of the discussion, we'll flip that information up. But I want to go ahead and shift gears for just a minute and really talk about data and analytics. And I know that's really overwhelming for a lot of dealers, data and analytics. Oh my gosh, whoa. But Todd, I want to flip to you. So what does data and analytics mean, and why should it be important to dealers today, in today's marketplace?
Yeah, it's a good question, and actually, when you think data and analytics, it can be really pretty mystifying, almost overwhelming. How do I make sense of all of this information that's out there in a way that's actionable? And we've spent a lot of time over the last quarter in particular talking with dealers to understand what the needs are. And there really are three key categories, the first of which is knowing the consumer. And of course there's pulling credit score and understanding that for decisioning, but it's also really in the context of geography. It's consumers in the area, what they're driving, it's their loan position, are they right side up on equity, are they in good shape in terms of their payment history and payment trends, and how do we take that up to, say, a ZIP plus 4 type level, something that's meaningful to the dealer. A lot of our dealers have told us, in particular independent dealers and used car dealers within that set, that there isn't much information on overall trends packaged nicely so that they can make decisions as to where to market and how to optimally market. Because really it's all about investing the marketing dollars properly, and having the right information can really help inform there what areas to pursue. The second category is really more along what other dealers are up to. So this gets into a little bit more competitive analysis, and again, anything that we've seen is that there really isn't much information there. The franchise dealers are in a little bit better position because they have OEM support, but The independent dealers in particular need to know more about what other dealers are up to. How are their loan portfolios performing? That's not information that's readily available. It's not really given up at dealer association meetings. So any way that there's a sense of understanding the trends of the performance of the portfolio, how the APR trends are, how the days past due trends are, all of that can help a dealer understand maybe where they're going right and where they're going wrong. And there's a third component to that, and that's really the final one that we're focusing on as we look at dealer needs, and that's lenders. So in analyzing competing dealers, sometimes it's about the dealer performance, but it's also about the lenders that are working with those dealers. And we see that especially with more pressure to find good subprime options, for example. Who are the lenders that are out there? What lenders are working with what dealers? And if you have a good sense of the dealer's portfolio trend and the fact that they're working with a certain lender, and of course you as a dealer know your own business and know that you're in a good position maybe to even work better with that lender, you have better performance, you have a better understanding of your customers, then all the more reason to say, here's some good lenders that I can work with so that I can basically expand my lending capabilities and sell more vehicles.
Okay. So that's a really great transition to Larry, since he was on the auto lending side for so long at Wells Fargo. So Larry, can you talk about really how dealers can enhance their relationship with lenders? Right, y'all want to close more deals, right? That's what it's about. You want to get that one incremental sale every day. And so having a great relationship with lenders can help do that. Can you explain a little bit more in detail on some different ways that they can do that as well?
Yeah, the industry has changed a lot in some ways and not in other ways at all. It's still about selling cars and getting them financed. And speaking of news, and we've been in news, one of the things the last couple of years that's sort of been a hot button is non-prime lending, and the concern around a non-prime bubble and some of those things kind of festering again, and customer affordability. So dealers and lenders today are using more analytics and more data than they have in a long, long time to sort of offset some of that. And really one of the top things, proof of income and verification of employment, has become a real hot button. And there's lenders, she mentioned I worked for a pretty big one, that used to do about 15% non-prime to 85% prime, and that's been dialed way back to about 5%. And just a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, they would waive income and employment on about 50% of those non-prime customers, or the 15% of that total population, where today that's about 5%. And there's a lot of things that contribute to that. We'll touch on those a little bit, but that makes that more difficult, that dealer and lender interaction. So, that's one big change. We know, and we have statistical data that shows us that customers who make under $40,000 a year have a 2 times more likelihood to default on the loan. So that's an area too, with non-prime being such a sticking point right now, and the lower income, verifying it and make sure the customers have affordability. That's a hot button with the regulatory environment that we're in, CFPB, which I'll touch on. So that's one way that we see the lenders and dealers sort of interacting more now, verifying that up front, making sure we're putting the right customer in the right car, so that not only do you get the deal funded, but it stays funded for a long time. The third piece is with the fraud. There's more fraud today than there's been, ever in the history of this business. And there's the synthetic fraud, that's a new word, and just customers stealing information from other customers. So, one of the ways we see that as well is a lot more upfront verification to get those customers in the cars and get them financed with banks and satisfy that contract with the bank, so that they're not coming back and saying, hey, this was a fraud deal 6 or 8 months down the road. I mentioned the CFPB, so a lot of what's going on today is driven by the regulatory environment of the CFPB. When I was there, I had the fortunate distinction of sitting with them at times, and there's a couple things they look at. One is affordability, so that's a big one. So for dealers and lenders, again, that interchange, that plug-in, that's a very important piece of it, and what's best for the customer. So making that payment and that customer vehicle experience be the right one for the customer so that they can pay it. We see a big change, I think, on the lender side as well, where there are some national groups now that actually are verifying employment and looking at verifying employment others up front, so that that customer, when they come in, they know how much the customer makes, and that way when that deal goes to the lender, there's not that hiccup. It gets funded, smoother kind of funding transition. So, we're seeing more and more of that. I think, the feedback has been that makes it a little easier to work together between the lenders and the dealers. Sort of that day of kind of hoping the income verifies is starting to pass, especially with that constriction around non-prime. So I think that's a trend that we'll continue to see, but definitely there is, I think, the lenders and dealers having to be forced to work together a little bit more today than probably in the past.
Right.
I would say.
Okay, good insight. So, we're fortunate to have some really great partners in the industry, and one of them is NIADA. And so, we do a survey with them. And Scott, can you address some of, what we're finding from a dealer confidence perspective out in the marketplace and kind of where, they think business imperatives are going based on that great partnership we have with the NIADA?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, as Rebecca shared, we are partnering with NIADA. We've been doing this since really 2015. So we're really excited about that arrangement we have with them. And it's something that's really important to Equifax. And we take a somewhat of a leadership position in managing, understanding the trends that are happening in this space to help not only inform what we do and how we approach the market to ensure that we're bringing value to the market, but to help our customers and other partners to go ahead and understand the path ahead. So looking at the historical performance of loan originations, of trade lines, and then ultimately anticipating what that's going to look like in the future. Larry covered a lot of this with the non-prime lending, right? It's changing now. That marketplace is changing. Before it was a very steady proportion of the total originations. Obviously the market itself is evolving, not only in how the market gets done, but just the volume of which it's getting done, right? And then the influx of inventory is kind of non-historic, right? We just don't have a whole lot of been there in the past and seen this influx of inventory. That means it's going to do X. So we leverage our partners pretty significantly to have insight into what that looks like moving forward. So our NIADA, we do a survey with that team. Quarterly survey. It's a dealer confidence survey. We leverage their 17,000 members that they have on their watch, basically. And so the feedback that we're collecting from like the last third quarter survey that we heard, I'm not going to get into the gory details of numbers, but I'll give you a sense of the vibe of what we're hearing. And there's probably no shock here, but it's just good confirmation. So the biggest thing on independent dealer NIADA member minds is that there's concern over the economy, right? So we see the economy in some ways doing really well, and then we look at the auto market, and it maybe not, isn't directly reflective. And that's because, in my opinion, a lot of the pent-up demand in the downturn of the economy was recovered, if you will, from 2010 and beyond as financing became more available to the average consumer. But that, again, is changing to Larry's point that, access to funding, we're having policy changes happening. So the lenders are actually, the dealers are actually seeing the results of what the economy is doing. So there's a lot of question out there of where we're heading, tax reform and so on. Lots of things changing and unknowns in the marketplace. So that really is a big concern for most of the dealers. So the second thing, then, which I really like to see, is that what dealers are not sitting there, woe is me, what am I going to do? Who am I going to have to let go because of this downturn? What they're doing instead, they're looking at this as, all right, what do I need to do to kind of take advantage of the marketplace, knowing that there's some softening in some way. The used car space still has some headroom for growth, which is great, as we have somewhat of a separation of price point between new car and used car. But basically, they're looking to say, how can I capture as much as possible? What I call every deal counts, right? Making sure that they're in there doing the things that matter to go ahead and attract the right buyers to their buying funnel. So that's what they're worried about. So they're going to be spending more money on marketing and more money on headcount to help better service the customer, to do business with the customer, the buyer, in ways of which that the buyer wishes, to kind of help with that experience. And then last thing that they're worried about, and this is not, and again, anything new, they've been worried about this for some time now, but as the franchise dealers move deeper into the used car space, they have typically or traditionally more leverage, more reach, more OEM access, obviously. So they have other partners that they have somewhat of an advantage over. So independent dealers are concerned over that and trying to find ways to differentiate from that. So it's not about competing with franchise dealers. It's a matter of how to go ahead and differentiate to find the buyers that are right for that lot to buy the car as fast as possible at the most optimal price. That's a good deal for both sides. So in 2018, we're looking to go ahead and modify that survey that we're doing now to go ahead in the sense of constant improvement to get other deeper insights and non-articulated insights in the marketplace today, finding ways to give more understanding of where the market trends are happening. But we're really proud of our relationship with NIADA and wish to go ahead and move forward with that.
Absolutely. All right, so we're running out of time, and before we do, I want each one of you to address what you think are the big rocks for dealers in 2018 from either a market perspective or a data-driven, insights perspective to really help dealers, again, close more deals. So Todd, I want to start with you.
Sure. I think this really ties to what any dealer should expect from a partner that's providing them with data insights. And really, I think what you want and what you deserve so you can focus on your business is somebody behind the scenes doing all the heavy lifting, pulling together the right data sources, whether this is for analytics and trending purposes or for creating the right score blend for a configurable type score that works for what you need, to even other basically usage of trended data to understand what the past cycles have been and what that means for the future as you look forward to trying to understand the market. So you really need a partner that's going to do all that heavy lifting and serve things up in a way that's easy to consume, easy to understand, easy to share with other key members of the dealership so you can make the right decisions. I think that's really the key trend.
Great. All right, Larry?
Yeah, I think, to go along with that, I think one of the big things is just driving customers sort of over the threshold and into the dealer. The competition out there is changing the way people buy cars and the way they look at cars. But ultimately, I believe, and I think people still want to look at the car and touch it, so getting them into the dealership is really important. The way dealers do that changes. The types of advertising that are being done are different, more digital and things like that. But that's a real key. I think that's a huge piece. And the second part, going back to some of the things we've discussed, I think is verifying who that customer is,
right.
Making sure they're who they say they are, things we hadn't thought about before, and making sure that we can verify employment and those types of things. So we're putting the customer in the right car, particularly in the non-prime, where there's again a lot of kind of focus on that now. And I think ultimately the result of all of it needs to be a smoother transaction from the customer getting to the dealership and buying a car. We know they visit 1.5 dealers now, so you want to close them more than ever. And doing that in a smoother way, and then getting that deal funded with a lender. That's ultimately the goal. You can sell all the cars in the world, but if you don't get them financed, there's no money in that. So, and I think that's the bigger thing. But that smoother transaction, those cars get financed, and they stay financed, and they stay on the road. And I think that's good for the overall health of the business as well. Particularly again with the non-prime customers, the more that they get in the right cars and stay in those cars, the better it is for the industry. So, for me, it's that. From the beginning of that transaction to the end, I think that's really the key. And it's much more digital and much more analytic, and there's much more behind that today than there ever was, for sure.
Absolutely. All right, thanks, Larry. Scott?
Yeah, I would totally agree with the two comments here on what dealers need to pay attention to. And in my opinion, again, being a bit more strategic looking down the road, this marketplace it's kind of stretching itself for the change that needs to come. And as Larry was mentioning, it really is about driving customers to the lot, but it's not just people, it's not bodies to the lot. It's the right person who's ready to transact, right? And so somebody who's ready to buy. So that digital landscape is really changing dramatically. It's no surprise, we all know this. But how do we take advantage of it in a way that allows the consumer to feel better served and easing up some of the process? That's going to be the biggest thing I think that dealers need to worry about these days is really embracing the digital landscape. I know back, again, being from Cox Auto Trader specifically, there was a lot of resistance of showing cars online and putting prices out there. And do I put the real price or the price I'm going to sell, the price I want to start negotiating at? So real challenges that are out there. And I can tell you this, in my opinion, it's not about transparency, although a lot of people talk about transparency, and that's the word that was used back in the days with putting price online, right? And so, but what does that do, transparency, most times, is it drives you to the bottom, right? It kind of eats away at profitability for dealers, and then you have to find other ways to monetize. And what I'm saying is really, yes, it's transparency, certainly, but that transparency is driven by trust. You are being shopped, so we're 1.5-ish to 2 maybe dealership visits, but it doesn't mean that that's all they're looking at. Certainly there's 20, 30, 40 dealers that they're looking at online, so you are being shopped. You're just not having a physical presence. So that trust factor that you can bring into the digital landscape is going to be vital to the path forward. And those who adopt early will attract buyers to that space. Those who are holding back and wanting to kind of do it still kind of like the old school way, I think are going to be challenged because obviously we have millennials buyers surging in the marketplace today, and that's how they see the marketplace. They're not comparing how they bought a car 3 years ago, 5 years ago, or how their parents bought a car in the past. In fact, they're actually resistant to that. And but a lot of people are comparing how they just bought a washer and dryer on Amazon the other day, all right? And so that's the kind of comparisons we, the auto industry, are being compared to. And we have to live up to those demands because consumers will talk with their wallets and their feet. So again, every deal matters, and taking advantage of digital, I think, is going to be really important.
Well, thanks, Scott. Thanks, Larry. Thanks, Todd. Thank you all for attending. We absolutely love the auto industry, and our passion is to deliver insights that drive better decisions for y'all so you guys can really close more deals every day. Again, Wyatt Jeffries, if you can flip that up on the screen, he is our automotive spokesperson. If you guys have any questions related to the breach, et cetera, please contact him. He'll take really great care of you. Have a wonderful day, and again, thanks for attending.